At that time, the elder asked, I wonder why the people who were scandalized with the cross, they didn't remember the prophets, especially Isaiah, who wrote about the suffering of the Messiah. Why? Why did they avoid that? They knew it. They knew very well about the prophets. Even the apostles were shaken and didn't remember, weren't paying attention, didn't want the Messiah to suffer. So this is a particular scandal, right? This is a scandal for the world. This message of the gospel, of the sacrifice. And we already see this. We've seen this in the world, this scandal of the cross. Let's talk about the three types of scandals. There's three types. He talks a lot about, Elder Athanasios in many talks a lot about the scandals because we see them so much in our day. There's three types of scandals that people fall into. There's the scandal of the cross. People are not able to accept, rather. The scandal of the cross, the scandal of history, and the scandal of monasticism. And we're not going to talk about the third one. Just to remember, according to St. Justin Popovich, anti-monastic sentiments are indicative of the loss of orthodoxy, the distortion of the Orthodox tradition of purification, illumination, and theosis. So if you or anyone you know or people in the church are scandalized by monastic life, in other words, they have a trouble accepting that as actually the evangelical ideal, and they are like, I don't know, this whole monasticism doesn't make sense. It's not. That means they have a loss of Orthodox ethos and phronema. It means they have not understood the cross and the ascetic life. So that's a third kind of scandal that we see, because monasticism is par excellence the crucifixion of the old man. It's the cross in a way of life that we all are called to. It's just that this is more intensified and in a way that's organized, let's say, more efficiently to achieve the same ends that we all have, right? And that is to pick up our cross and follow after Christ. So let's talk about the scandal of the cross. The rulers of the people scoffed. Remember this when he was on the cross, right? How can the Messiah allow people to crucify him on the cross? Is God abandoning him? This is what people will say. Where is God? And they say this all the time today already. Where is God in Ukraine? Why isn't he stopping this war? Where is God in the murder of millions of unborn babies? Where is God in the world today with all this war and destruction and sin? And where is God? They've been saying it, and they'll be saying it up until the second coming. And they said it in front of the cross, especially that scandal to the Jews. How could the Messiah be crucified? And of course, Islam, millions, a billion something. What is it? I don't know what the numbers of Muslims are in the world. They can't accept the cross. They reject the cross of Christ. They are among the worst of all heretics throughout the whole history of the church. This heresy of Islam is called a heresy by St. John of Damascus because it rejects the cross of Christ. No, it's impossible. It didn't happen. They refused to accept that it happened. They don't believe the scriptures are true. It's quite amazing. And the rulers scoffed and said, he cannot save himself. Why doesn't he come down from the cross and show us and prove to us that he's the Messiah, right? In the same way, in those years, they'll see the prophets and they'll wonder why God has abandoned them. And they see the righteous people throughout church history that are persecuted. And they probably asked in the days of many of our saints, well, how is it possible that this saint is persecuted? This saint is martyred, is exiled. St. Nectarios, how could people treat St. Nectarios? Bishops of the church, patriarchs treated St. Nectarios, a holy man, with such disdain, and even at the end of his life had an amazing temptation with the Archbishop of Athens, Meletios Metaxakis, according to historical witness, that accused him of sexual impropriety. And is it possible? St. Nectarios, who became the great saint of our century, was recognized. Right there, you can see the two sides of 20th century orthodoxy, right? Apostate, Masonic, ecumenist, deluded, of this world, and the holy, meek, humble suffering pastor and monastic leader whose relics worked untold miracles. Right there, you can see that unbelievable, right, in that snapshot of history. So they see the saints, they see the righteous within history, and they wonder why God abandons them. And I love this quote from Elder Athanasios. He says, "The gospel of comfort does not exist. There is no gospel of comfort. Let me comfort you and make life easy in the broad way that does not exist. There's no good news preaching comfort," right? Actually, the good news is the cross. The good news is you have to be crucified with Christ in order to be resurrected. That's the good news. And people who are running from suffering will meet it anyway in their lives. No one will escape suffering. The question is, what suffering do you want to embrace? That which is redemptive, that which purifies, or do you want to embrace the suffering that never ends? The suffering of not having communion with God, the suffering of not having the grace of God. That's the question. And it's really obvious that we embrace the cross and we are freed from the suffering that never ends, and we're freed from the suffering that comes from the lack of communion with God. The true gospel is a gospel of martyrdom. We are left to wonder how many will endure this scandal of the cross. So that is the basic and first and most basic scandal that the world cannot get around, right? The scandal of the cross.